Welcome to the Wellbeing Podcast, where every episode is a step toward a healthier, happier you. Let's grow, thrive, and shine together. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast. Share your thoughts and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. Today we're diving deep into something I think we can all relate to: overthinking. And to help us navigate this very human tendency, we've got some intriguing insights from two books: 10 Ways to Stop Overthinking and How to Stop Overthinking in 3 Minutes.
It's fascinating how much attention this topic is getting. It seems like everyone's feeling overwhelmed by their own thoughts these days.
Right, and these books offer some really interesting tactics. One that immediately grabbed my attention was this 3-minute technique from, well, the aptly named How to Stop Overthinking in 3 Minutes. They claim you can actually interrupt the overthinking cycle in just 3 minutes. You ever heard of anything like that?
It sounds almost too good to be true, right? But when you break down the steps, it makes a lot of sense. It starts with recognizing that you're overthinking. That awareness is key. Then, instead of getting sucked into the thought spiral, you shift your focus to your physical sensations. It could be your breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, anything that brings you back to the present moment.
So it's like hitting the pause button on your thoughts and grounding yourself in your body.
Exactly. And then the final step is choosing a positive affirmation to repeat. Something simple and uplifting that helps to reframe those negative thought patterns.
Okay, so we've got awareness, grounding, and reframing.
Yeah.
But how does this actually work? Is it just a distraction technique, or is there something deeper going on?
It actually taps into the power of mindfulness. By bringing your attention to your body, you're essentially interrupting the loop of rumination. It's like switching tracks in your brain. And the affirmations, when used intentionally, can start to rewire those neural pathways, creating new, more positive associations.
So it's not just about stopping thoughts altogether, but about shifting our focus and changing the way we relate to them. I like that. Now let's talk a bit about the author of How to Stop Overthinking in 3 Minutes, Dr. Saloni Singh. What's her background and what makes her an authority on this topic?
Well, what's interesting is that she actually started her career as a medical doctor, but through her own experiences and observations, she realized that many of the health issues she was seeing stemmed from mental and emotional stress. This led her to transition into coaching and focus specifically on helping people manage their overthinking.
That's a really interesting path. And she has this really striking quote about information overload. Information has become a form of garbage. We don't know what to do with it, have no control over it, don't know how to get rid of it.
That's such a powerful image, isn't it? And I think it resonates with so many people today. We're bombarded with information from all sides, news, social media, advertising, and it can feel like we're drowning in it.
Definitely. We're constantly consuming, processing, worrying. It's exhausting.
It is. And this information overload can absolutely fuel overthinking. When our minds are constantly bombarded with stimuli, it becomes harder to filter out the noise and focus on what's truly important.
So how do we combat this? How do we keep the information garbage, as she calls it, out of our minds?
Well, the first step is awareness. Just recognizing that you're consuming more information than you can process is a huge step. Then it's about making conscious choices about what you allow into your mental space. Setting boundaries with social media, being selective about the news you consume, even choosing to unplug for periods of time. These are all crucial for calming a busy mind.
That makes sense. So it's about being mindful of our information intake, just like we're learning to be mindful of our thoughts. But what about this idea that our thoughts can actually shape our reality? I mean, is this just some new age concept, or is there something more to it?
It's definitely an idea that's gained a lot of traction in recent years. And while I wouldn't say it's about magical thinking, there's definitely truth to the idea that our thoughts influence our actions and ultimately our experiences.
Right. There's that famous quote, "Our intention creates our reality."
Exactly. Now, I know this can be a tricky concept to grasp, and it's definitely not about blaming ourselves for every negative thing that happens, but it's more about recognizing the power of our thoughts. If we're constantly dwelling on worst-case scenarios, we're more likely to make choices that lead us down that path.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And on the flip side, if we focus on positive outcomes, we might be more likely to take actions that align with those goals.
Exactly. It's about harnessing the power of our minds to create the reality we want. And that brings us to another important quote. You attract what you repeat and believe not what you want.
Yeah, that one really hits home. It's a reminder that our repetitive thought patterns, whether they're positive or negative, have a real impact on our lives.
Absolutely. And that's why learning to manage those thought patterns is so crucial. It's not just about feeling better in the moment, it's about creating a more positive and fulfilling life overall.
So we've got these quick techniques for interrupting overthinking. And we're starting to see the connection between information overload, our thoughts, and our experiences. But I'm curious, what are some of the other strategies these books offer for managing this overthinking habit in everyday life?
Well, both books really emphasize the importance of mindfulness as a potent antidote to overthinking. In fact, Dr. Singh sums it up perfectly. Mindfulness is the answer to mindlessness.
I love that. So how do we actually apply mindfulness in our daily lives? What specific techniques do the books recommend?
They offer a range of practices from simple breathing exercises to more focused body scan meditations. The key is to bring your attention to the present moment without judgment. Notice the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, the taste of your food. By fully engaging with the present, you naturally reduce the mental chatter and create a sense of calm.
That sounds incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
And I imagine that with regular practice, these mindfulness exercises could really strengthen our ability to stay grounded and present
Yeah.
even when things get chaotic.
Absolutely. It's like building a muscle. The more we train our minds to be present, the less we'll be pulled into those unproductive thought loops.
So it's not about eliminating thoughts altogether,
Yeah.
but about developing a more mindful relationship with them.
Exactly. And both books offer some really practical tips for doing just that.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some of the tips that resonated with you?
Well, one that I think is really important and that ties back to our discussion about information overload is keep the garbage out of your mind.
That's a great one. It's a reminder to be selective about what we consume and to set boundaries with media and technology. We need to protect our mental space from unnecessary negativity and information that doesn't serve us.
Exactly. And another tip that I think is really helpful, especially for those of us who tend to overthink small problems, is do not let the tiny things become toxic.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm
Now,
definitely guilty of that sometimes.
I think we all are to some extent. But this tip reminds us that overthinking often stems from our tendency to magnify small problems. We can get so caught up in the details that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
So it's about practicing perspective, right? Asking ourselves, will this matter in a week, a month, a year?
Exactly. It helps us prioritize our mental energy and avoid getting bogged down by insignificant issues.
And there's that great reminder. You are born to grow and evolve.
Right. This tip speaks to our inherent capacity for change and growth. It's a call to embrace challenges as opportunities for learning and development. Instead of getting stuck in overthinking, it encourages us to view obstacles as stepping stones on our journey.
I love that. It's about trusting the process even when things feel uncertain. And then there's this simple but profound statement. Life is working for you. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, this tip encourages a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing life as happening to us, it invites us to consider the possibility that life is happening for us. It's about cultivating a sense of trust and faith that even in difficult times, there's a greater purpose at play.
It's about choosing to see the world through a lens of possibility rather than fear. And speaking of shifting perspective, one of the most striking images from How to Stop Overthinking in 3 Minutes is this idea that your mind is your life mentor.
Now, that's a powerful image. It really makes you think about the kind of relationship you have with your own mind.
Right. Is it a supportive mentor, encouraging and guiding you towards your goals? Or is it more of a critical, judgmental voice holding you back?
That's such an important question to ask ourselves, and it leads perfectly into the quote, "A sharp mind is your best asset."
So true. This really highlights the power of our minds.
Absolutely. When we learn to use our minds intentionally, when we cultivate a positive and supportive inner dialogue, our minds become our greatest allies.
It's like our minds can be either a source of stress and anxiety or a source of strength and inspiration, depending on how we choose to use them.
Exactly. And that's where the real work begins. It's about becoming aware of those negative thought patterns, those inner critics that tend to hold us back.
So it's about catching ourselves in the act.
Exactly. Notice when you're engaging in self-criticism, catastrophizing, or dwelling on the past. Once you're aware of these patterns, you can start to challenge them.
Okay, so I'm aware of the negative thought. What do I do next?
The next step is to reframe those thoughts. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Is there another way to look at the situation? Often we can find a more positive or at least a more neutral interpretation. It's like putting on a different pair of glasses and seeing the situation from a fresh perspective.
It's like taking those negative thoughts to court and presenting a counter-argument, right? Instead of just letting them run wild.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we practice this reframing technique, the more automatic it becomes. We start to develop a more compassionate and supportive inner voice.
So it's like training our inner mentor to be our biggest cheerleader rather than our harshest critic.
Exactly. And remember, it's a process. We're not going to eliminate negative thoughts altogether, but we can learn to manage them more effectively.
So we're not aiming for perfection, but rather for progress. That feels a lot more attainable.
Exactly. It's about developing a more mindful and empowering relationship with our thoughts. It's interesting how these two books, while offering different perspectives and techniques, ultimately converge on this central theme: the power of mindfulness and intentional thinking.
It really speaks to the transformative potential of these practices. When we cultivate mindfulness, when we learn to manage our thoughts consciously, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities.
We free ourselves from the shackles of overthinking and create space for clarity, creativity, and inner peace. And isn't that what we all crave? A sense of peace and ease in our minds.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into overthinking, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I'd like to leave the listener with this question. What one small change could you make this week to create a more mindful and empowering relationship with your thoughts?
That's such a great question to ponder. It could be committing to a daily mindfulness practice, setting boundaries with your phone, or consciously reframing one negative thought each day. Every small step counts.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Overthinking is a common human experience, and there are countless resources and practices available to help you navigate it. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and keep exploring what works best for you.
And if you're feeling inspired, we'd love to hear about your own experiences with managing overthinking. Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Wellbeing Podcast. Share your thoughts and let us know in the comments what topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes.
We're all in this together, and by sharing our experiences, we can support each other on this journey toward greater well-being.
Thanks for listening to the Wellbeing Podcast. Take care, stay inspired, and see you next time. It's amazing, isn't it, how our minds can work both for us and against us.
It really is like having this incredible tool that can either be our best friend or our worst enemy.
So true, and it all comes down to how we use it right.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the power of our thoughts and choosing to use that power in a positive and constructive way.
Not letting those thoughts run wild and take over.
Exactly. We can learn to be the masters of our minds rather than the slaves to our thoughts.
And it's not about suppressing those negative thoughts altogether, is it?
No, it's more about acknowledging them without judgment and then consciously choosing to shift our focus to something more positive and helpful.
It's like we're training our minds to be more resilient and resourceful.
Exactly. And the more we practice these techniques, the easier it becomes.
So it's like building a mental muscle, right?
Exactly. Mindfulness and intentional thinking are skills that we can develop and strengthen over time.
And the benefits are well worth the effort, I think.
Absolutely. Greater clarity, inner peace, improved relationships, better decision-making.
It's like opening up a whole new world of possibilities.
It really is.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by overthinking, remember you're not alone.
There are so many tools and techniques available to help you manage those thoughts and create a more peaceful and fulfilling life.
And it all starts with that first step.
Awareness.
Recognizing that you have the power to choose how you respond to your thoughts.
And that you're capable of creating a more positive and empowering relationship with your own mind.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of overthinking. We hope you found these insights helpful and inspiring.
And remember, be kind to your mind. Nurture it with care and watch it blossom.
Thanks for listening to the Wellbeing Podcast. Take care, stay inspired, and see you next time.